Paul Goodlow, Mike Seidel, starting at 6 a.m.
Hurricane Irma is now impacting our state.
They're telling us we have a chance of having 6 to 12 feet of storm surge.
Our state has never seen anything like it. Do not think the storm is over when the wind slows down. The storm surge will rush in and it could kill you.
Hurricane Irma back to a strong Category 4 storm and set to make landfall in Florida in just hours. Impacts already being felt from the Keys northward to central Florida, but somewhere on the west coast they will take a direct impact, perhaps a landfall from this monster storm. Good Sunday morning. Thank you so much for watching our continuing coverage around the clock as we track Hurricane Irma as it prepares to make a landfall. I'm meteorologist Kelly Cass alongside our hurricane specialist, Dr. Greg Postel. And as we predicted, those outer rain bands are already making their presence felt.
Yeah, the eye wall, the worst of it, is really only about 15 miles south of Key West, Florida. Moving northward, it will be there. Those winds over 100 miles per hour likely crossing the Keys in the next couple of hours. So that is dangerous weather imminent now.
And even before a landfall, you've got the tornado threat and, of course, the very heavy rain. And take a look and listen to this. High winds snapping power lines, causing power flashes, as you see there, all over Key West. This was just earlier this morning. And we already have widespread outages being reported. We are going to talk to someone live from Key West in just a short while. And this morning, we've got more than 250,000 Floridians in the dark, even across the southern part of the peninsula. That number is expected to grow, of course. So Irma, as I mentioned, back to a Category 4. You can see the winds right now as of the latest advisory, 5 o'clock this morning, 130 miles per hour. That's in the eye wall surrounding the center. So the pressure has been falling. So we've been seeing the winds basically going up, and it's moving toward the northwest at 8 miles per hour. Ever since that eye came back out over the water north of Cuba, we were fearful that this would happen, that it would do some re-strengthening, and that's exactly what we've seen take place. So over the last 24 hours, yeah, we were very close to a Cat 5 this time yesterday. But then we did see, of course, the interaction with land over the north coast of Cuba. That actually weakened it to a Cat 3 for a time yesterday afternoon. And now, of course, in the purple. Look at this. It's not too often you see this. Almost the entire state of Florida, at least the whole peninsula there, under hurricane warning showing up in the purple. And there you see the tropical storm conditions that could be felt as far north as Atlanta, Georgia. And Greg, you've got much more on what Irma is going to be doing in the next few hours.
Yeah, I mean, the center of Irma is closing in right now on the Florida Keys. We've already seen some wind gusts over 90 miles per hour in and around the Key West area. But the really, really nasty stuff, with winds over 100, are closing in, and they will be there in a matter of hours, I would say. There's the center. You can see that thing pretty well identified on the satellite pictures, swirling around here, right in there. And overall, the presentation on the satellite suggests this is a very powerful hurricane, even trying to regain some of the strength that it lost yesterday over Cuba. It is a very powerful hurricane right in there, and the strongest of all the winds, not surprisingly, are located or co-located with those darkest purples and reds, where the strongest of all the thunderstorms are. Here's sort of a look at some of those top wind gusts that we found. 94 miles per hour just to the east of Key West, 84 at the Weather Service office there on Key West, 58 and 70 here, far removed from where the center of circulation is. That's one of the more important things to remember, that you are going to see hurricane force wind gusts eventually in Miami and places points north, far removed from where the center of Irma goes. This is a very large storm with tropical storm force sustained winds and hurricane force gusts extending out over 100 miles away from the center. But check this out on the satellite picture. This is a ferocious eye wall right in there. This is where 100 plus mile per hour winds are closing in on Marathon Key, and they will be there, as I said, in the next probably 2 hours or so. It's only the leading edge of that northern eye wall, about 15 miles south of the Keys, and it will be there shortly as the system moves on at about 8 to 10 miles per hour. So overall, conditions are going to get worse in the Keys very rapidly, and they are getting worse over parts of southern Florida. Tamiami Airport just reported a wind gust of 61 miles per hour. We've seen some isolated reports of over 70, and those are happening in those outer rain bands, right? So you're not getting that steady wind, that steady high wind yet. What we're seeing across South Florida is those bursts of wind coming in with those dark shades of yellow and red, the outer bands here that are moving in that will contain those 70-plus mile per hour wind gusts. Here's just a little bit of a history of what it's been like in Miami wind-wise, with these sustained winds below tropical storm force, but occasional gusts into that range and even higher than that in areas in and around Miami. As I just mentioned, Tamiami Airport just gusted to 61 miles per hour. That is enough to do damage. That's enough to knock down trees and create power outages as well. And that's going to be the theme moving northward today across the rest of Florida. Check some of these numbers out here. Not yet are we seeing those strong winds, but they are coming, and they are going to be hiding for a while anyway in those rain bands. Even 50 mile per hour wind gusts are coming all the way up and down the coast. Time to get out where Irma's going to go. Now, this is really an ominous picture because it paints the center of circulation of Irma not far from Naples, Florida, later on this afternoon and evening, right around 5 o'clock. Very strong winds coming in off the Gulf, bringing significant storm surge in excess of 10 feet in and around the Naples area, and then northward toward the Tampa area overnight tonight and early Monday morning. The center of circulation with wind gusts near 100 miles per hour in the Tampa area. Not forgetting our friends on the Florida East Coast. You're going to get very strong winds as well. Gusts to hurricane force likely through Jacksonville and points northward. And then guess what? Irma, as it begins to move north, the west wind on the south side of it will continue to bring some Gulf water inland into the western coast of Florida. And then, Kelly, this becomes an inland wind threat with lots of power outages and trees down all the way up through Georgia, eastern Alabama, and parts of South Carolina. There are going to be some 75 mile per hour wind gusts, I think, almost all the way the entire state of Georgia. Back to you.
Yeah, schools have been canceling accordingly to that forecast plan. Miami certainly feeling the outer bands of Irma this morning. Reporter Michael Spears with our affiliate WTVJ is out there in the elements. Good morning, Michael.
So right now, we're standing on 30th Street in Edgewater, Miami. We've been giving you live reports throughout the night from a very secure place that is blocked by a building. And, excuse me for that, my hat almost flew off. We wanted to step out and step into this a little bit. We're not too far out. My photographer is obviously pretty steady right there, but wanted to step out and give you some perspective on how intense these wind gusts are. We've been here throughout the day here in Edgewater, Miami. Earlier this morning, obviously windy, but nothing compared to this and what we're seeing right now. We've been posting on social media some of these videos of the very strong wind gusts. These bands that have come in. And some folks have been in disbelief about it, but this wind is very strong, stronger at some times than others, but right now definitely a strong display, and this is just a little taste of Hurricane Irma. Of course, we're going to be here, we're going to be checking around for storm damage and keep you updated with live reports. Reporting in Miami, I'm Michael Spears, NBC6 News.
All right, and this is just the beginning of our impacts here in the United States. Let's get updated headlines on Hurricane Irma and what we know at this hour. 18 million people, nearly 90% of Florida's population under a hurricane warning. Nearly 7 million people across South Florida are also under a tornado watch. More than 282,000 customers without power. That number expected to rise throughout the day. President Trump tweets, the U.S. Coast Guard, FEMA, and all federal and state brave people are ready. So we want to talk more about the dangerous storm surge because, Greg, in some cases, this is really unprecedented to see this kind of a water rise. I'm not even sure people can imagine what they are in for.
No, southwestern Florida is particularly vulnerable to significant storm surge, and we're going to see inundation levels at the life-threatening stage later on today and tonight with lots of wind and lots of water coming in off the Gulf of Mexico, unfortunately. Let's go to the radar, and I can show you what Irma is doing right now. Category 4 hurricane closing in right now on the Keys. We have largely an east-northeast wind moving in across parts of the Florida Peninsula, and that so far has not led to significant water rises, at least as far as we can tell. Some of these numbers aren't really showing up yet, but that is about to change, certainly as Irma continues to move on its northward journey, soon crossing the Keys and then moving up toward the southwestern part of Florida where we expect significant inundation levels. Let me show you an example of what I mean by that. These maps are derived from the Hurricane Center's product, which essentially gives you kind of a worst case scenario, a high-end outcome here, where the likelihood of getting it worse than this is not all that high. But look at some of these numbers coming in. Let's zoom in on this area and we can show you what it looks like in and around, for example, the Naples area. If we can zoom in on that, we can do that. Let's do that. Because what we're going to do is show you that these areas in red can expect inundation levels, in other words, water above normally dry ground, somewhere above 9 feet. You can find your spot on the map if you can and get to higher ground or take shelter on a higher floor because significant water is going to be invading parts of southwestern Florida, including Fort Myers Beach, all the way inland up some of these rivers and estuaries. There's going to be significant storm surge flooding, and it doesn't stop here in southwest Florida either. You can keep moving this map northward and head over to the Tampa Bay area where we expect significant flooding. Now, this is an interesting fact here. What you see is a lot of flooding here on the east side, or I should say right on the shore here of Tampa Bay. That's with a northeast wind before Irma moves through. So this is going to be first. That's the sort of water inundation that we're going to see first with an east-northeast wind. And then as Irma moves away, we're going to start to see some of the shores here of Tampa Bay get flooded from the opposite side with the circulation moving away. And that overall is what we're going to be watching very closely during the late afternoon and evening hours today. And going back to the radar just to show you what we're dealing with, there is Irma and the center of circulation here not too far away from Key West with the eye wall, about ready to cross parts of the Central Keys, including Marathon Key, where winds over 100 miles per hour are expected in that zone. Kelly, back to you.
And of course, Greg, the tornado threat is very real with this system as well. Already this morning, we've had a few tornado warnings. We have a live look at Miami now via EarthCam, where already we've had tropical storm conditions, meaning tropical storm force winds. In fact, a 58 mile per hour gust was reported at Miami International at 2 o'clock this morning, and it's only going to get worse. A tornado watch for South Florida does continue, including right here in Miami-Dade. You can see the palm trees moving around quite a bit. Really not a good time to be out and about, and a lot of the coastline obviously evacuated because of the storm surge. But then, of course, you've got the tornado threat as well, especially here across South Florida. As we go through the afternoon, it is going to get very dangerous. This particular tornado watch goes until noon, but we'll likely see more tornado watches issued as we go throughout the day and this entire event of Irma. As Greg just mentioned, the eye is still south of Key West, but we're already seeing those very strong rain bands. And within these rain bands, you've got the strong gusty winds reaching tropical storm force over 40 miles per hour, but you can also see a quick spin up of a tornado. It can happen just like that and then spin down or weaken very quickly as well. So sometimes it's hard to detect on radar, but you just need to be ready for it into an interior room. Right now, we do have flooding concerns as well. There's a flash flood warning in effect for St. Lucie, which, oh, by the way, just a little while ago, not too far from here, we did have a tornado warning in effect also. So you could have flooding, also a tornado warning going at the same time. Then, of course, you got the storm surge. So there's so many hazards when it comes to this huge hurricane.